I'd like to welcome everybody to the Community Resources Tourism Committee meeting. We're here in room 60. We'll now call the meeting to order. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Anybody want to? It looks like our roll call is everybody's here. I mean, I know Tom is online or on virtual, so looks like everybody's here. So roll call is good. Meeting minutes. All right, Larry. All right, got a Supervisor Bjork first, my second. All right, Supervisor Barrier. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, public comments. Anybody? Nobody? Dan, nobody got, you got nobody? Got nobody? Right? Okay, if it's okay with the staff here, we'd like to move item 7 up to now. They have a meeting to get to. So if they'd like to move it up if we could. We got Gary Steen reporting from Colfax Library and Melissa, was it? Lisa, sorry, and Lisa. So she has a little comment she'd like to say, so I'll bring her up, and if it's okay with the committee to move that up? Okay, all right, thanks.
County Board, my name is Gary Stevens. I'm here, I'm also on the Colfax Village Board and Colfax Library. So county hat off, village hat on. So I'm here representing the village, but Lisa's going to do the talking for the library. And we appreciate the fact you're moving the agenda up for us, and I'd like to introduce Lisa Hurlbert, our librarian. And thanks again, folks.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak to you. I realize that there may not be anything that you can do about my particular situation at Colfax, but it'll definitely make me feel better to let you know the situation and at least make the request. Could you give us a little bit of additional help this year? So I wanted, well, I'll try to say this. I was going to read you my comments. I'll try to talk instead.
Some of this,
Make it briefer.
She gave us a handout, Tom, but you ain't gonna get it, so she might have to hit some of the highlights for you, so he's
Okay.
on virtual, so.
That's fine.
Oh, should I? Is it
No,
okay
go
if I?
Go ahead and talk. I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, I wanted to begin by acknowledging that Dunn County has been great about giving its libraries 100% of the Act 150 funding we request. We really appreciate that. This year, we're experiencing a shortfall, though. The village of Colfax, and we're a municipal library, is surrounded by the township of Colfax. And so when township people come use our library, which they often do because we're right by them, like not even a mile away, that is, their services are paid for by the county. And this past funding, well, in the 2023 budget, or the 2023 annual report, we actually had a slight increase in village resident use of the library as opposed to township resident. And it wasn't a huge difference or anything like that. Usually we don't have to pay too much attention to it. But this year we were affected rather profoundly. We ended up getting over 16,000 less from the county than we did last year. And for the village of Colfax, which is only 1,200 people, they just couldn't absorb that whole amount. So we realized that, we had to make some drastic cuts. The problem is that we've already been cutting our budget as much as we can every year. There really is no fluff in our budget. And also, a lot of our expenses are fixed. They're related to utilities, wages, just things that we really can't do anything about. So, we've tried. I did manage to cut our budget significantly. The village tried to help us as much as it could, but we still have a shortfall of about $5,161, which is a lot for us, but maybe not a lot, I'm hoping, for your group. If you could, just this one year, give us a little more time, to prepare for what may be a changing demographic shift. Maybe this is how it's going to be in the future. More village residents are going to use the library. I just want to give the village of Colfax more than just a couple months to make up such a huge financial difference. And so the information packet I gave you, it includes things like a couple of charts showing the change in usage that led to this. And then on the back of it, I also tried to list all of the things that the library has taken on in recent years to try to help our community. The village of Colfax has lost its medical clinic, its dentists, and now its pharmacy. And if you'll look through the list, there are ways that the library is trying to step up as a resource for the village residents. Things like telehealth meetings, we've had those. So some of our things that we've been doing are health related, and these are not coming out of the budget that we get from you. These are all things that we've been able to do through grant writing. And also, they're things that maybe don't cost us any money to do. They just take a little bit of effort on our part. But so I just wanted to make sure you understood that what the library is doing is more than just, checking books out to people. We're trying to help the community in ways that it's lacking. And so $5,000, boy, that would really help us out. I mean, we'll keep doing what we have to do to go forward, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood that this was our situation. So do you have any questions or anything, things you wanted to mention while I'm up here? Otherwise, I just really appreciate that you let me say all this and, something to think about.
Go ahead, Supervisor Bjork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the one township. Are there any other townships that have,
Oh yeah, they're just the primary one. We also get people from Sand Creek. We even get some people from, Chippewa County, Eau Claire County. That's always a part of people who like our atmosphere will drive a ways to come out there. And so that's what we've been riding that for a while. We could attract people from a little further away. But, I'm glad the village residents are using the library, so.
what is it, heard it a few times about the reciprocity between Chippewa County and Eau Claire County and Dunn County. I mean, how does that even out? I mean, are
Yeah.
Dunn County residents at a greater extent going to Eau Claire or Chippewa, or how does that fall in?
The way it works is that in our library system, anybody's allowed to go anywhere, to any of the member libraries. But if, say, an Eau Claire person uses the Colfax library, we do not get reimbursement for that because they have a member library. They're part of our system. So Colfax people can go to Eau Claire, the city, and use the library for free as well. It's when you're talking about Eau Claire County and a township in that county that doesn't have its own library, If those people use ours, then their county has to reimburse us, if that makes sense. It depends on if the people using our library have a library in their municipality or not, is whether we get money from them.
And the
County.
Sand Creek Library is still as active as it has been or not? I can't, I mean, is there
Yeah,
also a library at Sand Creek?
yes. However, they are not open. I think they're open like partial. They don't have like as full hours as we do. They have a smaller staff there. So, say they're closed I'm not sure what their hours are exactly, but I think they're only open 2 or 3 days a week. So therefore, sometimes people from that area come here too. But there's not reimbursement from Sand Creek because they have their own library. So their people can use our library without any extra charge.
And then one last thing, is there a rural library association? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
then they lobby the state, like everybody else in this room, for funds, right? So I mean, how has that been? I mean, has it been successful in an increase or a lesser degree or what?
Well, I know there's a rural library association. I don't know if they have lobbyists or not. I'm guessing that we're probably kind of too small potatoes to really, you know, be on their radar. I don't know of any big efforts being made. So, this is kind of our situation.
So what would increase library usage in Colfax Library? I mean, more times for reading groups or
Well, I should have emphasized that our circulation didn't go down at all. It actually went up from the previous year. It's just that the proportion of users became more of the village residents and a little bit less of the township. But yeah, our library is very active. We have, play groups and book clubs and story time, summer reading. We do really well with the families. So our attendance is good.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
So I'm assuming that the students have their own high school library or they use the village library.
Yeah, the school has its own library, but we do have kids come in too. Yeah.
And then they're not charged at all for that because
Oh,
they're
no.
part of the village anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Any further questions for Lisa?
Bob, I have a couple
Oh,
questions.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, if I
Supervisor
could.
Quinn.
I don't have the, unfortunately, I couldn't be there, so I don't have the document in front of me. But I'm just wondering, exactly. So my understanding is the request is to provide the supplemental funding for the 2025 budget year.
Yes.
And is there a deadline for when you need that?
No, we'll try to make do with what we have. I'm not necessarily expecting anything from this. We'll try to get by, but boy, that would make our job easier if even in a couple months,
Okay.
whatever you can manage. I know it's unusual to ask this. I just want to
Well-
make sure that we're not in a super weak position going forward. So,
Yeah, no, it seems to me like things come up and we should figure out a way to address them if we can in a thoughtful way. And this seems like a reasonable request and a reasonable situation. I'm wondering if the chair has thoughts about or Dan, or maybe perhaps Dan has thoughts about if we were to consider this, what would be the process for doing so?
So Yes, I've had some thoughts. So you realistically could make a request for contingency funds. This being January, that becomes yeah, a difficult ask, right? As we're talking about funds that have been set aside for emergencies in the county in the very first month. The other option would be to do essentially a budget adjustment, which would be asking to utilize fund balance to pay for that. But it's really would just be a in that form, it would be a budget adjustment that would be made to the library budget with fund balance being the source of funding.
And either of those would have to be approved by the full board.
Contingency requests are governed only by the Committee on Administration.
Okay.
Any further questions?
One for Dan.
Yep.
Oh, Bob, just one, it seems to me like, this is a serious request, so, and I know we don't have it listed for action on today's agenda.
Yeah, I did put it on as an action item today.
Oh, you did? Okay, I
Yep.
didn't notice that. Okay, all right.
Question for Dan. Broadband Task Force had two situations here in the last few months where we advanced funds to two different projects. And was that contingency fund money? And is there contingency fund balance? I mean, I think it's $100,000 a year. And we can, I mean,
Yeah.
had that money all been used from last year, contingency fund?
So contingency fund is think of it, don't quote me on the number, but I want to say it's $150,000. But that is budgeted every year. And so it's similar to any other item that would be a part of the budget where it is allocated, that the funding source for that money has already been determined. There's just some strings attached to how you go about doing that or getting that fund. And so the Committee on Administration oversees it, and it is intended for opportunities and emergencies that were not identified as part of the budget process. So it's just kind of an easier way to access money in those particular cases. So that is exactly what we did for the broadband projects that we had talked about. And the only difference that I would say here is from an urgency standpoint, you don't necessarily have that concern that we need to act on this now. The other part is it's January. So as soon as you utilize some of those funds are gone for the rest of the year, as opposed to when that was done for broadband. That was done in December at the December Committee on Administration meeting, which is actually the very last meeting that could ever have been done on. So not spent, that money goes back into the general fund.
But that funding balance that was there from last year, was it exhausted?
It was not exhausted, but the year ended, so the money went back into the general fund. And then a whole new $150,000 is available this year.
I think it's real interesting that when you look at the way people receive their information and quench their thirst for knowledge. We just did a pretty good job to expanding broadband to one of the last areas that was happened to be the Whitetail Club area for a number of people. And now we're somewhat at the other end of the spectrum where we're talking about libraries and their dissemination of information. But I think the one thing that libraries have over sitting down at your computer and tapping away is that libraries are a community event, and you're there with your neighbors and friends, and you're not just stuck behind a keyboard getting a piece of information. So I think it's really important. And I always haven't been, real excited about libraries because I'm not a library user. I'm sort of like, I just hope everything starts user. And, but I'd sure like to see us move forward and be able to support the Colfax Library, because if we don't support our small towns, we won't have small towns.
Yes, Gary Steen.
Very thankful for you allowing us to bring this situation to you. And I realize there's quite a bit of information here. And if you're not comfortable with doing anything this evening, if you need more time, that's reasonable. And as Lisa pointed out, it's not a budget crunch right today, but for the year it is. And as a county board member, I know that we have a formula and things like that, but I think this is a valid request. And Lisa did our library, well, all our libraries in Dunn County, because I'm the head of the library committee for Dunn County. All of our libraries do a great job, and they are striving to be more than just libraries. They're striving to be a place in your community where you deliver or have access to finding out where your services are. So I would appreciate any efforts on our behalf from you folks, and if you need more time, that's reasonable. But the reason we got moved up is we have a 5:30 library meeting in Colfax. So I appreciate your attention, and whatever you decide is fine. And I want to thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Any further questions for Gary or Lisa before they take off?
At a high rate of speed, I might.
They're coming down.
Thanks for seeing us.
That's great.
I'll entertain a motion to open up discussion on it. So if we need a motion to open up discussions.
Oh, I guess I'll make that motion to open up.
Supervisor
discussion.
Barrier,
I'll second.
right? Supervisor Bernard. Okay. All in favor? Right, okay. Now we're open for discussion. Now, anybody got any ideas what they would like to do?
Well, I'm supportive of trying to find a way to help them out. I don't know what the best path is for moving forward, but it is what I would like to do.
Again, we don't have to do it tonight. We could table it a little bit, talk about it. I mean, figure out what we got and or we don't have to be the full amount. Maybe just give them whatever we can afford to do too. You know, that's an alternative.
Mr. Chair,
Tom,
this is Tom. Yeah, I do understand and support the idea of trying to help the library out. I think the more as important though is that we figure out, how we're going to do it and do it in the right way. Otherwise, we're going to have other things coming at us, and other committees will too, that are maybe more difficult to deal with. So I would be in favor of I guess reconsidering this at our next meeting as an action item, and in the meantime ask administration to sort of provide us with some thoughts about how we might do it and potential implications of how we do it.
You know, can also look at the fact that if we do it to one library next year, then maybe they all come at us with the same thing. Once you open that can of worms, that's another
Yeah.
thing we gotta look at down the road for money wise, where the county's already short. So something to think
I
about too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful, but we do need to be thoughtful too. So
Chris, did you have a comment?
I do. I stuck it in the chat, but the amount of the contingency fund is 125,000, and we spent about $86,000 of that last year. So, as Dan's correct, the rest of it actually remains in the general fund, that'll pull $86,000 to pay those contingency requests, but it really left about whatever that is. 25, 35, $40,000 that was unspent.
But in 2025, we have $125,000 and zero of that has been spent.
You're correct.
So, and I would say, I think just if that were to go forward, I think part of that is to me, identifying the funding sources really of which path do you want to go down. You could bring it to the Committee on Administration as a contingency fund request, which then would use up $5,000 of the $125,000 of contingency fund for the rest of the year. Or you could do a budget adjustment, which would say we want to use the general fund, and that process would go through the full county board for approval. So I think that's kind of the point. I defer to Chris. I mean, it's really about how the board wants to handle that. But those are really the two processes that we would have in order to essentially adjust our budget. That's what's happening. So
I would concur. I think we certainly can come back, or Dan can certainly bring them back in written form, but I think really the two options are either a contingency request to the Department of or Committee on Administration, or a budget adjustment request coming forward, and utilization of an additional $5,000 of fund balance.
Supervisor Quinn, would you like to make a motion to postpone this and think about it for
Yeah.
next
but
meeting?
I think that, yes, I think that would be, that would not be a problem for the library. It would give us a chance to be more thoughtful in our thinking. So I would move that we postpone decision on this, I guess move to table until the next meeting.
Oh, yeah, Dan.
he's making a motion. You should probably get a second.
Oh, yeah.
I'll second that motion.
Send by Bert. Any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that will be an action item put on schedule for next meeting.
It would it. So I'm gonna okay, we can get it agended. Would you be interested in having kind of a deep dive into library funding that kind of goes along with that? I know that this is something that's going to come back to this committee in July again, when you do approve those budgets, but I think it does kind of help explain the issue that Colfax had run into. Okay.
So wait until later.
No, I just was whether I would prepare something to explain that or not. So
I think that would be prudent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yourself.
Okay, I think we'll move on then. Extension staff, Kristen.
Okay, so we have two new staff here I'd like to introduce to the committee. Ryan's been here for a little bit, but hasn't been able to make the committee meeting up to this date. When was your December?
November something.
November
Something in
something.
November.
Okay. Yeah, so I want to introduce Ryan Steary. He is our livestock educator, and I'm going to give him a chance to kind of introduce himself as well, just some of his background and different things. But then also Deanna Weir-Scala is our new support person in the office, so replacing Melissa. So a new face started about 3 weeks ago, and feels like she's been here for 3 years. So just jumping right in. So we're really happy about that. So I'm going to have Deanna also do a little bit of an introduction, but we'll start with Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan Sterry, just like Kristen said, moving into a livestock educator role. So I guess I get to play with both hats of both the new guy and the semi-old guy of new to the area, different position. This position's new to the area as well, if you think more broadly about it, but also had some previous extension experience. So I had been working the Baldwin office for several years before making the move a little bit further to the east here. So that's where do have a little previous experience working with Jerry on a couple of projects and Margaret, but just trying to learn the area, get around to all the different offices, trying to work through how to, working on a list of names of farmers to meet with, so on and so forth. Being the semi-old guy, there were a couple projects already in work, so I've transitioned them over to here. So Jerry's on the agenda for tonight for the ag update. Later this spring, I'll also be doing the same thing, and we can touch on a few of those there. But previously, when I was in a little bit more of a livestock role, focused more on the beef side. If you look at farm numbers, that's kind of the one that sticks out in this area. But Chris and I have been talking to how do we work in some of the sheep and goats, and I do think still have dairy experience. So I know that's not the role, but if we do have a dairy question, definitely still send them to me. That's something we're handling on a one-on-one basis, and there's going to be some things that cross over a little bit, and we're not going to worry about the gray area on that too much. So, but yeah, if you have any questions, definitely let me know. I'm also playing the new guy on getting people signed up for the e-newsletter. So if you are interested in events and want to attend one, we'll get your name on there. Just let us know and we'll get you on the list.
Can I ask a question? Good. You've, if you haven't noticed yet that I often send extension agents out of here with a job, whether they do it or not, I never know. But I've got one in line for you. Filled this position from, previously it was a dairy position with, and I would be interested to know in your 3-county area, what the cow numbers are compared to 10 years ago. And I'm not making a play one way or the other for big farms, small farms, but I would like to know cow numbers and whether you want to bring that in to number of farms isn't that much of a concern of mine. But what is a concern of mine is the availability of veterinary services. And you try to get a vet now. One closed in Menominee here last year. And the veterinarian I used for years and years retired, and the new one that I was using moved to Durand. And now it costs me $165 for him to drive onto the farm. So I kind of would like to know, as far as services to farmers or beef. So I mean, so okay, I'm a beef operator and a few horses and 5 or 6 brown Swiss cows, but it's really difficult to get a veterinarian to get jobs done that you need to get done. And I don't know if they're all being assigned, and I think they are, to every particular dairy for a half a day for their pregnancy checks and things like that. But it'd be interesting, do we have that many more cows in the county that veterinarians are spread thin, or do we have that many fewer large animal vets servicing those cows? And I'll tell you how far ranging this stuff comes. I serve on a guy that's on the Fair Board, Dunn County, that lives west of town. And every Monday morning, he's in Marshfield at a big dairy breeding cows. So are there less people servicing the same number of cows, or and then somewhere along the line you can put in a plug for Madison Vet School, because you would think that all days aren't like today and yesterday, for working cattle, but, I don't seem to hear that that's a big career choice.
So I'd have to look it back at the 10 years. Chris and I have been looking at the current numbers so that I can get to you
Yeah.
shortly after the meeting. I mean, in general trend, I
Yeah.
think we've talked about this before. Fewer dairy farms, the cow numbers, they've changed some, but probably not that much. It's just where the cows are at. On the beef side, it's almost the opposite of a lot of farms, but fewer cows per farm, excuse me. I think there's just some things particularly in that veterinary business industry that are tough right now. So let me look at the numbers a little bit closer first, but I do think there are fewer people available in that business. I have a college classmate that recently is leaving large animal practice just because his body is used up, his shoulders and his knees
Sure.
after 20 years of abuse. Just physically, it's worn on him. So I think that's not to be an discouragement for anyone looking to be in that business, but it's definitely a consideration that we hear a lot of. Just the wear and tear, the miles you put on traveling between farms, where maybe some other aspects of that business are a little bit more profitable. So I don't have the answer to that. I know that's
No,
difficult.
I understand, but-
We hear it come up a lot, and there's some things in the rules we can talk about after too, of like, having that vet on record to get certain prescription drugs. I know it's an issue, farms trying to make those connections. We can't solve it, but we are trying to explore some things and like how to help people gain some of those skills, not to replace a veterinarian, but know when to call the vet. So when I was talking about the gray area between beef and dairy, like one of the ideas we're batting around is like a training on calving skills. Well, that applies both to beef and dairy farms, and so we invite them both into it's not a dairy specific program, so stop me if I'm getting off track here, but so those are some of the things that we're trying to kind of explore in a new role here.
She would say I take him off track a lot.
I'll go with you, so it cuts both ways.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Deanna Werskawa. So I just started December 29th, so like 3 weeks I'm ahead. So you probably got all the stuff for this meeting from me, obviously. But that was one of my first big tasks, and it was a little bit intimidating, I'm not gonna lie. But previously, before coming here, I was an ag teacher for 3 years over in Cochrane Fountain City High School. That's where I graduated from. That's my home community. After that, I actually did 6 months of interim or backfill position in Buffalo County Extension as a 4-H educator. Just so happened that interim role was ending here in about 10 days from now, actually. And I decided Wisconsin idea that extension promotes was something I was not willing to give up. Just so happened too that over the summer I had moved to Dunn County and I saw this position open, so I figured I would throw my name in the hat, and that's why I'm here today. But you'll see a lot of the people here standing or sitting next to us. They're pretty amazing, and I've been very lucky in this position that you have a group in here that is so supportive, and is willing to teach whenever it's needed. But yeah, that's a little bit of my background. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, any questions for either Deanna or,
Just welcome aboard. I think you'll enjoy it. So.
yeah.
Yeah, so far, Bob, I've really found that I haven't ever worked in a climate that's been so accepting, and it's something that it's like a breath of fresh air and weight off your shoulders. So this group is pretty amazing.
That's great. So thank you. So yeah, Deanna, she has that outreach part of her position as well. So she'll be doing some outreach and working with some of our programs as well. So so hopefully we'll start getting her out in the community and different things. Other than that, I don't really have any other updates from Extension. So I do have to run to the Eau Claire County board meeting tonight. So we have a couple educators that are presenting tonight. So I'm going to take off for that. I'll be here for the rest of the extension, but when you see me leave, it's not because I don't want to listen to Dan, go over 17 items, but it's because I do have to get to the Eau Claire County board meeting. But thank you.
Okay, well, next on item is the extension educator presentation. Oh, we went through the written, went through all the written ones. I have any questions for the rest of the guys first, I guess.
Yeah, so we have, well, obviously Ryan, we've got Zach is here, Garrett's on, I see, and Margaret is on, and I think, yeah, Sandy's on as well. So if you have any questions for any of the educators that are on, that'd be fantastic.
Seeing none, we'll move on to item C then.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity, and to the committee for presenting again this tonight. Very cold, so it's kind of hard to talk about crops and soils when it's frozen out there. But so like I said, welcome to Ryan coming on board. And I think moving forward, Ryan and I have worked together for 16 years or so when he was in the St. Croix area. So I think we're going to move forward with a pretty strong agricultural program as we start connecting some of the dots. So what I'm just going to present tonight are some of the programs and some of the research projects we've been working on, and I'll just ask Deanna to bop along here. So what kind of what Larry was talking about is some of this economic impact for Dunn County. So the Census of Agriculture was done in 2022, and it takes a couple of years to get data pulled together. So this was released in 2024. So these are kind of the numbers that come out of Dunn County. So if you want to really dive into this, this is a profile report, and there's more graphs than this. But you can see about $381 million of market value of products that are sold agriculturally. And that can be anywhere from crops and livestock, fruits, vegetables, all that kind of thing. And so the per farm average of that market value is about $300,000. $300,000 of actual market value coming from the average farm across the county. Farm size, you could kind of see we're still in that medium range, but if you look at that 1,000 plus acres size, that continues to grow. We're up to about, if you look at 500 to 1,000 acres, it's 15% of your farms are on that larger acreage size from that standpoint. And then the number of farms, not surprising, it drops a little bit. Sometimes it depends if some years that'll actually go up. USDA, again, $1,000 of sales usually qualifies you as a farm, so that always depends on where things are at. So overall, the average size of farms, 308 acres, again, that whole thing is up 14%. So we are seeing the average size of farms grow a little bit more compared to the last census in 2017. So you can go to the next one, Deanna. And then just finally on some of this stuff, again, crops and livestock, you can see are the big drivers in this. So again, grains, oil seeds, the dry beans, of course, here in Dunn County is pretty large. But overall, livestock is still pretty large, with poultry and cattle and calves kind of driving that market. And again, milk is still pretty strong there. So again, Larry, to your question, we can get some specific data. I didn't put number of cows and things like that in here, but you can kind of see where things are trending from a land use side of things. So again, cropland over 200,000 acres, almost 300,000 acres of cropland is in the county. And then, no-till practices, that's pretty encouraging as far as reduced tillage, those kind of things. We've definitely seen the use of conservation practices across the landscape increase. And the cover crop one on the bottom is 17%. And I would say 5 to 10 years ago, that was probably like 2. So we've really seen that increase in cover crop usage. And so farmers are adopting that conservation practice. And then the farms by value, which is pretty interesting. So you look at the small farms, less than 2,000, that's 30% of your farms. And then the bottom one, over $100,000 or more, that's your second largest. So they're big or small. There's that group in the middle that represents about 25%. But again, it's the trend we see across most of Wisconsin. A lot of small farms. So you start to see the specialty crop, people moving in, off-farm income. We want to farm. We've got a farm background, but we don't want to milk cows, or we don't want cattle, or we got a few sheep, or whatever it is. But then you also have the very large farms. And so seeing that representing over 50% of your farms isn't surprising across Dunn County. So, okay, Deanna. So from my standpoint, okay, what do I do? So most of my work is in forage and grain production, so management of emerging crops, some grazing, not as much, but a lot of soils and nutrient management types of things. And economics of crop production, whether that's a specialty crop or we look at some of the major crops across the county, we look at cost of production. That usually drives your marketing side of it too. Can I create a profit from what I have invested in this? Nutrient management, nitrogen management, you'll see that, protecting ground and surface water. That's an issue that surfaces in all three counties that I work in, Chippewa, Dunn, and Eau Claire. So we've really kind of focused on that part of it since all of them have a desire to look at that surface and water quality side of things. The emerging crops, you'll see still dabble in a few of those as the markets, we're trying to develop markets for maybe some new crops that can fit into cropping systems and where it's profitability to fit into that, whether it's the adoption of some small grains, like we look at the barley industry, or I've worked with industrial hemp as well. And again, I'll fill you in on a little bit of that at the tail end here. So go ahead, Deanna. So once again, local crop management courses, again, that could be workshops, field days, those kind of things. We do a Badger and Forage, Badger Crop Connect and Focus on Forage webinars. So the Focus on Forage will be launching here in first part of February with a 4-week series. We generally attract roughly 80 to 100 farmers from across the state or consultants, agronomists that attend those regularly. So that's what part of something that came out of working virtually, and we just continue to offer that as it's for continuing education credits and those kind of things. Grain marketing workshops and online courses, we're still working on some grants. When Katie Wantock was here, we picked up some of her grant funding and finishing up those grants. We're working on some new ones, so hopefully we're able to pull in some more grant dollars to keep that project going. That grant's due by the end of the month, or end of February. So we're hopefully being able to keep delivering that program. Pesticide applicator training, we're immersing Deanna in that tomorrow as we start our first one. I think we're right here in this room, if I'm not mistaken. So I think we've got 25 signed up roughly for tomorrow. We picked up 2 or 3 today. Okay. And then manure applicator training is one we also do statewide and regionally. So we've usually offered one here actually in the Colfax area, since we've got some larger commercial applicators that provide that manure applicator service. And then, like I said, the current focus I've got from the programming, but also the research side, is on nitrogen and that manure management. Okay, so Deanna. So you'll hear from Ryan and I down the road. We do a lot of on-farm research. It's something that's actually required of us, not just because we're in the Ag Institute, but we still have a faculty appointment, and so we have to do this research within the state or the county specifically. So I'm going to just explain a few things quickly on adaptive nitrogen management and a nitrogen optimization pilot program that's not in this county, but there's several projects that are in this county that I'm kind of working with specifically. And then we've done some work with malting barley, both winter and spring. We interseeded some alfalfa into corn silage, which is kind of a unique project. Some winter bale grazing. I think Ryan's been dabbling in that over time. My role in that's now that Ryan's on board, I've backed away from that one. And then industrial hemp, and all of this kind of boils down to where's the opportunity to maybe change management or some of these cropping systems. So to start with this nitrogen optimization pilot program and the adaptive nitrogen management, basically it's a way to study different rates of nitrogen application, either through small plot or larger plots. The adaptive nitrogen management was a small plot that we did right here in Dunn County, just down the road at the demo farm. And then this nitrogen optimization pilot program, Extension led it. I'm one of the team members. It's statewide. We have one location in Chippewa County, but like I said, I know there's a number of watershed groups. I think there's 2 in Dunn County that are actually getting funding through this program. So it's there's a request out now, but there's about $1 million through Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Many of these run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per project. So that's one that we're working on. So you can go ahead, Deanna. So again, the goal is to answer a specific question on nitrogen management, improve that profitability, look at commercial nitrogen management efficiency. So again, looking at the groundwater part of it. What we're putting on, is it actually getting pulled up by the plant, or are we losing it to the groundwater or runoff type of thing? So go ahead, Deanna. So this is the one in Chippewa County. Like I said, these look very similar across Dunn County as well. You can see the streaks in there where the nitrogen rates are much lower. You got yellow corn, those kind of things. So just a little visual of what these projects look like. The one in Chippewa County, and they've done these also at the demo farms and some of these watershed groups here in Dunn County. I just grabbed these pictures, but we'd had a backhoe and these lysimeters, the picture on the left, the little circle, there's a resin in there that traps nitrate. So you stick those, you dig a hole, you put these in about 30 inches deep, you line them up 3 in a row, so you're trying to intercept as much water as you can. And we're going to dig they've been in there a year. They've been in there since April. So we're going to dig these back out, hopefully in April of 25. And then they get tested to see how much nitrate got trapped. And then we know how much manure was applied, how much nitrogen was applied. And so we dug, it takes a special farmer to let you dig 48 holes in their field and put 144 lysimeters in. So that's what's in this field, and we're going to hopefully capture some pretty good data out of that. So you can go to the next one. This is what the yield looks like. So again, we harvested this fall, and the darker line on top is the manure. The bottom line is just the commercial fertilizer without the manure. And so you can see that manure does have an effect. It bumped up that the yield a little bit, and it even moved that economic optimum nitrogen rate, which is the EONR, to the right. So it means we could put a little bit more nitrogen on, or the plants could use a little more nitrogen, preferably from the manure, because that whole line got shifted up. So we know the benefit from manure is there. Now it's, can we, because the nitrogen rates are the same across whether it had manure or not. We took the manure credit and you still saw the bump. So we know manure is doing something out there to help that those plants out there. So again, overall, we're seeing that. Now the adaptive nitrogen management, the one we did here in Dunn County, right down at the demo farm. Again, this was a little different, smaller rates, but just smaller plots, 7 rates across the treatments. So we went from no nitrogen all the way up to 200 pounds, whether that was put on with a pre-plant right at the time of planting, or when the plants were up about a foot tall. And so what you can see is, this is what we're shooting for, is that nice little curve. So once it hits about 120 pounds of nitrogen, it doesn't pay to put any more on. And so you're wasting money. If we went to 160 to 200 pounds of nitrogen, you basically saw no return in your yield. So these are the kind of things we did not put lysimeters in this field. The Tech College and with Chase Cummings and the Land Conservation Department, just to the west, they were doing more work with the lysimeters in a same type of management type of thing. So what we've done is put together a nice little report. And I was last minute, I got the report. I asked Deanna to print it. I don't know if it came down, but we'll get that to you. We'll email that out, because they put this in a nice package for it's easy to understand. And we have a little fact sheet for you. We'll send that out. And so there again, you can kind of, it doesn't show the best, a little washed out, but in the upper left-hand corner, you can definitely see where the zero rate is. It's a little yellower and shorter type field. So here's what a curve might look like. So again, this was Chippewa County. This is a similar project in Chippewa County. This last year was the first year we did it in Dunn County. Going to replicate that again in 2025. But you can kind of see the curve. That's what we're hoping for, is to see that nice little curve where it doesn't pay to put any more nitrogen on. And then the graph on the left just shows the return to nitrogen. You can see it dropping. So the more you put on, the more money you're throwing away. So the next one is interesting. This was an irrigated site. Look at how flat that line is. It's like, okay, if I put 0 on, I got the same amount of yield as if I put 200 plus pounds of nitrogen on. So here was 1 year, again, that's why we do these over multiple years, 1 year where you would have said, oh, you're recommending no nitrogen? Well, maybe that year it would have worked. So if you go to the next slide, I think I have it on there. One thing, look at the 177. That's how much nitrogen was in the soil profile. We look at the soil nitrate level. So if you take 50, which is the background amount of nitrogen that usually is available in soils on average, so you got 120. And so there was 120 pounds of nitrogen already available by putting nothing out there. And that's why the 0 rate was exactly the same as the 250. You had all of the nitrogen you needed already in the soil going into that year. So we're really pushing this pre-plant nitrate test to find out how much nitrogen you have before you start going into adding a lot more nitrogen, or that supplemental nitrogen. So again, I thought I screwed up when I saw that flat line, but then I saw the soil test report. And I'm like, that's why it was at 0, because you had all this nitrogen hanging around that 2-foot level. All right, alfalfa interseeding with corn silage. It's kind of like, what are you guys in extension doing now? So we planted corn. Then about 2 days later, we went back and just seeded alfalfa right over the top. So we grew the corn silage with the alfalfa. This would have been 2023. So that's what it looked like in the fall after the corn silage came off. So you can go to the next one. So the corn silage yields where we interseeded and where we didn't, there was about, 1.5 tons of yield difference on the conventional side. Didn't have that alfalfa competition, but we had 72% of that field covered in October. So it kind of acted like a cover crop, but now we have that alfalfa ready for a full harvest in 2024. So we got about 3.1 tons of alfalfa off of the cuttings that we took in 2024. We also seeded some right next to it that would have been that direct seeding. And you could see there was, we gained about over 0.5 ton of dry matter just by planting a year earlier from the interseeding. So just something we're trying to get farmers maybe to look at. You can go to the next one, Deanna. That's what it looked like in July. So you got the corn, the alfalfa growing right with the corn, and it actually didn't look too bad. And like I said, we picked up over 0.5 ton of extra dry matter by doing it this way compared to seeding it in the spring of 24. Then last couple projects, malting barley. We're looking to see if we can get that to the local breweries. Well, not Leiningkugels anymore, but apparently that's off the table. But spring and winter barleys, can we get that into a grain production system that fits with, instead of a cover crop, can you use this winter barley to actually have a harvestable crop and then go into another cover crop or a long-term legume, those kind of things, working on it as an emerging market for some of the local craft breweries as well. And so we've looked at varieties, nitrogen rates, fungicide rates, potassium studies. And so we're just trying to see what's the management behind the malting barley side of it. We do have a little small plot planner, so we can put these out and do a lot of replicated studies in a pretty small, tight area that we can work with. And so some of the results, 2023, we evaluated 30 varieties, 2024, 22. And then we actually have these planted up by the Sand Creek, Barron County area. So almost right on the border with Dunn, Chippewa, and Barron County, right up in the corner up there. And so the average yield, this last year, I think being so wet and we had a few issues with it right at harvest. And so not as good a yield, but our range has been anywhere from 17 to 60. So if you pick the right varieties, you can have pretty good yields on it. And then finally, with industrial hemp, continue to work on that. I think we got one more year of our grant left. So that 2025, I think I'll be out of this business. And still looking at grain and fiber research, variety selection, nitrogen rate, and planting date studies as well. And the next slide is just kind of the yield side of it. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner is Wisconsin. We do this with Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana, Purdue University. But the bottom right are the plots we have here in western Wisconsin. So we evaluated about, let's see, this is grain, about 17 varieties of hemp varieties. And you can really see the range from some that barely did 500 pounds to the acre of grain, and some topped out well over 2,000, depending on the specific plot. But overall, we averaged somewhere around 1,100 pounds to the acre. So it's about an average yield so we can do it. We know we can grow the grain, the hemp for grain here. And then I think the next slide is fiber. So on, again, that bottom right-hand corner, you can see the big range in the fiber varieties, ranging from anywhere from under 1,000 pounds, 800 pounds per acre, all the way up to over a ton per acre in a couple of these varieties and individual plots. So I think we did 15 varieties of fiber this year. So again, very intensive type of work, small plot, hand harvesting, that kind of thing. So that's why I think I got one more physical year left in me, and then I think I'll be like a veterinarian. I think my body will be shot at that point. So the last thing I'll leave you with is Ryan and I being on the faculty side of things. We have a service requirement to do as well. So you'll hear us lead different types of things. So the nitrogen rate work group, we have a department, just like a faculty department would on campus. I currently serve as a section vice chair. Ryan's been on a lot of our review committees, those kind of things. We serve our local association for the Wisconsin Association of County Ag Agents. And then Red Cedar Demo Farm has been great to work with Chase and NRCS and the Technical College with Brent Christensen. And then the last thing I'll just mention is the Mayo Clinic Midwest Rural Health Research Community Action Board. Long title, but I've been on this committee for, this will be starting my third year. But we just met this afternoon. It's basically give Mayo Clinic researchers feedback on how to reach rural audiences on specific research projects that researchers are working on. Today, it was about RSV and how they can encourage more vaccination, or they had a whole database of who's been vaccinated, who hasn't, age groups and those kind of things, and how we can get more information out about RSV and being able to control it. What was interesting is they said during COVID, there was no incident of RSV. And they think, were they not testing for it? That was our question. Were you not testing for it? Or just people weren't out and about mixing together? Or was the focus too much on one thing and they didn't notice RSV over here? So some pretty good, neat database, but I just want to bring that up, that's something we work on. And then Ryan and I are contact information as well. So kind of a snapshot of what's going on in my world.
Supervisor Bjork.
Thank you. If I get Professor Clark in the room, I'm going to ask. The alfalfa corn, it seems really interesting, but are you using for herbicide or Roundup Ready alfalfa? And
Yes,
so
it's a spendy program.
yes. Do you have a number on what per acre that cost?
Well, actually, we're doing the cheap model compared to what UW-Madison's protocol is. So I would say we're, as far as establishment, we're in probably that, I don't, for that year of establishment, you're probably in that $700 an acre range
Okay.
with the seed. And we did not put any extra fertilizer on, just starter.
Right.
So that was the other.
And you didn't leave any ruts when you combined or you?
It was very dry. It was a
Very
very
lucky.
dry year that year.
Okay,
so.
then the other one has to do with, you mentioned NRCS.
Mhm.
And I haven't checked with them recently, but there was a time when they were cost sharing for farmers to do cover crops. Is that still a thing that's happening?
Yes, that is out there, but if you've already done that, they're not gonna continue to fund you. They'd encourage you to go with the conservation stewardship program.
Okay.
So it's kind of a launch point. And
Well,
then
that-
after you're funded.
That
a
was
couple
kind of my
years, they
question, because
Don't fund
the
you.
funds that they had could be gobbled up by 2 or 3 big operators. And, the guy that wants to do 30 or 40 acres, there wouldn't be any.
Yeah.
And then, as far as the, legumes that were probably replanted in there for cover crops
Mhm.
for using up that nitrogen, are we encouraging farmers to grow that grain or that, see what I mean? To
take it to grain or?
Well,
like
to
a
take
for-
it to-
Take it as a
the
crop.
plant, whatever it is that you would plant for cover crops,
Mhm.
can you grow it and then also, harvest the grain or whatever it is and seed it, or do you need specific equipment, or is it just with combine?
No, most of the grains can be done with a combine. So you already have that either drill, the equipment is there to establish it and harvest it.
And then be able to use it as a cover.
And then
crop,
use it
right?
as a cover, if you have, time or room to store it and
Right.
keep it in condition. That's the
Okay.
question.
Well, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's plenty.
Yeah. Thank you, Jerry.
I just have one question too as well. This last Monday, the local fire departments in the whole area of Round Rock Falls had a big training program for methane gas. We had a local Capel farm put in a digester. And do you see methane gas as being an economic impact? Are you going to track that? And would that be how much for Dunn County and how much for state?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because these are going online. The economics usually boil down to, can you get it to the pipeline? How far is your? Yes, correct. So I think there's an economic incentive there with a lot of energy incentives and energy programs. So I think you're going to see, especially larger dairies that that's who's going to put the digester in for the most part. Maybe you might have a grain facility like Chippewa Valley Bean, for instance, that might have residue or something that they can ferment, but usually it's going to be more manure based than anything. So the economics usually pencil out. if they can tap into the pipeline. If they got to truck it, then the economics usually don't work out very well. But I would say that individual farm was going to get definitely some rebates or some incentives from either the people buying it, or there's just that the government programs or through the power companies are going to incentivize farmers to tap into the pipelines.
I don't think they're very close to the pipeline. They could probably get it there if they had to, but they'd have to dig it all in. But do you see that as something that's going to be the future?
Renewable natural gas is something that is going to be, it's there. Now, I think this could be a great Garrett question because he maybe works in that world a little more. But I think that's one that, from an economic development standpoint, again, it boils down to, they were generating electricity with these digesters. They were flaming it or burning it, and then that was turning a generator, and then you were sending regular electricity onto the grid. Now it's the natural gas methane part of it that is to go into that pipeline. And like I said, the closer you are to the main line going through, then it pencils out. Again, incentives and these kind of things that go into cost sharing and those kind of things to get it built. That's going to be a big factor. So I think, yes, from where that farm is located, and I know we've got one going in Chippewa County as well, right along Highway 29 on the east side of the county, almost on the Clark County line. That one is probably moving forward here in the next 6 months to a year. But the line is pretty close there. So it's much more economically feasible for them to do it. But if you got to put it into trucks and then truck it to the line, that's where it starts cutting into your bottom line. So I think from the energy standpoint, yes, I think we're going to see more of it. It just depends on the technology and the infrastructure to get it to the lines.
Going back to Larry's question, you can see the cow count go up if they start making money at this. I don't start counting.
Well, I
cows
think,
again,
yeah, I mean, it could be, I think maybe you'll see the farms that already have it just add on another barn. So whether the cow numbers change, but those farms that already have the digester will probably add cows. I would see that, but I know Ryan's had experience too.
Well, maybe just one quick comment. On the older systems, some of the discussions with farms came down to, do they have the time? Do they have the interest to learn how to run those systems? Or is there a company that they can work with that, I don't want to say subcontract, but it's almost a subcontract with them that they'll run the system. So it's, again, having someone like a Garrett that can do some of that strategic planning with a farm to know how involved they want to be in it. Would they rather have, maybe a different type of arrangement where a company runs the digester, it's on your farm, they're using your manure, but maybe you're not the one operating day to day, or you might want to be bringing a family member back to the farm. This could be a way to expand the farm into a different type of business. So it cuts both ways, but that's something I heard from a lot of farms of, this sounds great, but do I have the time, the expertise to learn how to run a new system while I'm also milking cows 2 and 3 times a day?
and I'm not sure which way they were doing it there. So, any other further questions? VW extension at all? Supervisor Quinn, you good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, then. Seeing none, we'll move on. Items at the place of the request of the chair, economic development update. You said Adam's online?
Yes, I'm here. All right. So I believe I was with this committee last in August when I had just started. So a couple of things that I can share this evening would be just some of the things in my work plan for 2025. So with my work plan, we had identified a few areas of focus with the Economic Development Summit, particularly in business retention expansion, business attraction and investment, startups and entrepreneurship, and housing. At first, we didn't quite know exactly how involved I would be in the housing space, just because there was a lot of work already being done, and I didn't want to come in and have to really hinder any progress that had been done already. But it seems that housing is the first thing that we really need to start moving the needle on before we're going to be able to do many of the other parts of my job. So we allocated about 25% of my capacity into housing. Another 20% will be in business retention and expansion. With that, I have a specific deliverable to do at least one business retention expansion visit in every village in the county across this year. So making sure that we're not just serving Menominee and kind of the low-hanging fruit of the industrial park and the Stout Tech Park, but making sure we're serving the entire county with my position. Main ones that I would like to be kind of first would be Ole over in Boyceville, Timber Tech and Anderson Bridge over in Colfax, and then hitting a couple here in the Menominee area as well. About 15% of my time is going to be spent with small business and entrepreneurs. Specifically, some deliverables in that particular area are going to be in connecting entrepreneurs to the resources that already exist in our area, as well as the revolving loan fund through the Regional Business Fund. I wrote a grant for small businesses in October that I'm still waiting to hear on, but while I was writing that, I compiled some data from the Small Business Development Center as well as the Revolving Loan Fund at the Regional Business Fund. Both showed that Dunn County is very light on our uptake of the services, the free services that are provided by the Small Business Development Center, as well as placing last in dollars given from the Regional Business Fund, as well as loans, period, from the Regional Business Fund. So making sure that the programs that exist for our region and for the businesses that exist within Dunn County are effectively connected to the entrepreneurs that can leverage them is another major area that I'm focusing in. And then about 10% of my time will be spent in business attraction. So that is responding to requests for information and requests for proposal from various national searches, as well as smaller searches that are just reaching out to us directly. I have engaged specifically with Colfax quite a bit on this particular initiative, as they are one of the communities looking most to develop another kind of industrial park area in their community. But there are other opportunities in the village of Wheeler. Village of Wheeler's already reached out. Elk Mound is considering some different opportunities, and Boyceville has some things going. I'm still working to connect with the communities of Ridgeland, Downing, and Knapp. I've physically stopped into Knapp and have met the clerk, but I haven't gotten a response on my email to just come to the village and kind of see what's going on, get a feel for what their appetite is, if any, for development. The major thing that I've also found as I've been traveling throughout the county is ensuring people know that I'm not a developer. I'm economic development, and so I'm kind of the liaison between developers and the community to make sure that what the developers want to do and what they're offering is the correct fit for the community that they're approaching with those opportunities. So making sure that folks are on the same page, that I'm not coming in to just develop and do what I think is best for that community, but really working collaboratively with them to add capacity to their village or town staff and make sure that I'm effectively working with them to create that sustainable development for their communities. The other 30% of my time is primarily in the operations and administration of my position. So working as the executive director of the Greater Menominee Development Corporation, the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation, and the Stout Tech Park. Between those things, the networking activities that I'm participating in, professional development opportunities that I've been afforded, that is kind of making up my position so far. So I've really hit the ground running. I've gotten integrated right now with the county housing work group, and I'm adding some capacity there, working with Supervisor Quinn on some green energy and renovation awareness campaign, specifically through the Focus on Energy and Inflation Reduction Act programs that are available to Wisconsin residents, and making sure that Dunn County, again, can effectively leverage the things that exist for them and are already there. We just need to make sure that they're being brought to the forefront when we're talking about renovations, when we're talking about small business as well. So that is about it from me. Are there any questions at all?
Anybody got any questions? Seeing none, looks like you're off the hook here, so
Awesome. Thank you so much.
thank you. Dunn County Communications.
See, it wasn't just all me this time. Dunn County Communications, so think since we met last, we had a broadband story go out. I believe that was in between that. And that was picked up very much, a couple of newspaper stories and WQOW also picked that up. So we released that on January 2nd, which apparently is a slow news day. So it it got picked up very much. And we then released a story last week, or a press release last week, about the neighbors of Dunn County and the financial situation, the positive financial situation of the nursing home. So haven't seen that get picked up. I know there's some stories out there, but I don't know if I don't think I've seen it on the news yet. So and continuing to work on some more. We're going to probably be doing a press release related to the sale of the old transfer station, and any other items, if you have them, please share them. Just trying to get the word out about all the things that we do and the different activities that are happening.
Any questions?
Dan, I did see the neighbor's story get picked up by the Menominee Minute. That was in the
Yep.
release, I believe, yesterday in the newsletter.
Yep.
Moving on to.
Hang on.
Nope.
Sorry.
Mhm.
No, Monica over here.
Okay, yeah.
Hi. I'd be interested just in getting the press releases that you put out. I don't know if you could distribute those to the supervisors in general, or I don't know if anyone else would find that useful.
We certainly can. It's just an email, so yep,
All right.
we can add that so all the supervisors get them. We always release them social media as well, but we can.
Yeah.
I know it.
I recently
you
quit
know,
Facebook, which
right.
is why I'm looking for other avenues.
Yep. No, perfect. We can get those out. And that is something I guess just internally, county manager has been sending 2 weeks now into sending some emails off to our county staff at the end of the week. I assume you supervisors get those as well, summarizing some of those items that are going out there, and those will be in there. So
Thanks.
Yeah, it is handy to get the sheriff's department reports when they got some. We always see those. That's kind of handy. So yeah, good idea. Thanks.
Just one quick, in fact, we actually just received an email today, just like, I think maybe 20 minutes ago from the police department. So it would be nice, I think, to see those other communication stuff come through to supervisors. It's about the fire from the last weekend, but
yep, we can certainly work on getting that information out. There's a lot, and we always try and make sure that we're getting it to everybody who needs to see it, and not too much that it becomes overwhelming. So happy to take any feedback you have.
Okay, moving on to broadband discussion. Dan?
Yeah, so county board last month approved the endorsement of 2 providers. So we've sent that information off to be able to get that into their applications. Mosaic is holding a public engagement session on February 20th in the town of Hay River to ramp up support for their grant submission in that area. As it relates to the press release, that is an area the town of Hay River, New Haven, and Tiffany are where I get a lot of the questions. New Haven and Tiffany, there's a provider, Next Gen Broadband, who's been working on putting fiber optic in those in New Haven and Tiffany, and so there's a lot of residents there that aren't currently served, but they are. There's a provider there that is working on doing that is utilizing grant funds, and in addition to funds that were provided by the county in that area. So if you hear anything about somebody in those two townships, they're not covered, but but it is on its way, and funding through the state, county, and federal funds have been put towards those projects. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. I know that the provider had run into a few hurdles in their path, but they're still moving along.
Any questions for broadband discussion? Seeing none, move on to item D, Dunn County Tourism.
Yep. So December 31st was the last day of the. It was actually not December 31st because we did it the day before, but it was the last day of the old Dunn County Tourism website. So switched over to utilize the site that is essentially shared with Explore Menominee and managed by Explore Menominee. So that transition has happened. We'll wait to pay our last bill for the website here, and then it'll get moved along. So that it's something that this committee had done over time, and I think happy to see Explore Menominee kind of take that over and take it and run with it a little bit. And I know that they still have some plans to increase some of their rural reach.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions from anyone? Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. Next meeting is February 18th, 4:30. Does everybody okay with the time, and do you guys want to move earlier, later, different day? Is it working out for everybody? I just beginning of the year may look at it, so I mean, some of you committee people are here for all day, so yeah. Okay, I'll keep it as is then. I think we're adjourned. Thank you, guys. Very good meeting.
Nice.